In this video, we will be going over what it takes to become an insane Sentinel player. In Valorant, there is one class of agents that is an absolute nightmare to play against. If you run into a good Sentinel's bomb site, you're in for a world of trouble no matter how good your aim might be. But what makes a good Sentinel good? Is it all about your setups, or maybe is it also a bit of team play? What's going on, guys? It's your host Sergeant Frost here, and in this video, we're going to explore exactly how the best Sentinel players take over their ranked games. This video will be covering the goals you should have as a Sentinel player, the value they provide to any team composition, how to play the role, common mistakes, and keys to climbing. So let's not waste any time and jump into it. The main goal of any Sentinel player is to maintain control of the important areas of the map. The obvious zones Sentinels want to maintain control over are of course the bomb sites. Many teams, especially in solo queue, prioritize steering clear of agents like Cypher and Killjoy because of how potent their utility can be for the enemy team's execution. However, the goal of a Sentinel shouldn't only be to bolster the strength of any given bomb site. The best Sentinels not only know how to protect bomb sites, but understand how to enforce their team's vulnerable positions from game to game. This includes things like your team's flank, mid, or connectors that the enemy team is using to win rounds too. If an area of the map is being overrun and leading to your team losing rounds, then by default it becomes high priority for Sentinels, even if that area isn't a bomb site. The true value of any given Sentinel lies in their utility and how they use it. Unlike any other agent class in the game, Sentinel's utility is all about controlling and planning ahead. Almost all Sentinel abilities are placeable and rely on the enemy playing into them rather than the other way around. I'm sure we have all been in positions where either ourselves or our teammates are trying to play retake with only a Cypher cam to their name. This type of situation is exactly what the best Sentinel players constantly try to avoid. What Sentinels lack in retake power, they more than make up for with Fortress-like defensive capabilities. A good Sentinel player can make any area of the map feel as though you're running into a trap that no amount of aim can bail you out of, while simultaneously they free up their team to take more risks, stack bomb sites, and maintain control of themselves more safely. The value of these factors makes some form of Sentinel an almost must-have on every map to keep tabs on the enemy. If you view the other three roles in Valorant, Duelist, Initiator, and Controller, they all work in tandem. Duelists and Initiators are able to tag team and combo for kills, and Controllers can help mitigate risk and smoke off common angles. The reason why these roles can work so well together flawlessly is because of the Sentinels that maintain map control, protect their flanks, and keep options open for their team. An example could be on a map like Haven. Imagine your team is planning to take the A bomb site and your whole team quickly finds out the site is stacked with 3 enemy players. If you don't have a Sentinel holding the space for you mid with either utility or themselves, it allows the enemy to lurk up into these positions and punish your team, or give the enemy a jump on your rotation, leading into your team running into another stacked site. So now that we have an idea of why the Sentinel characters are so important in any given team comp, let's talk about how to actually play the role like a pro. Though I should mention first that if you're really passionate about Valorant and are serious about improving, you should check out our website ProGuides.com. We offer coaching, guides made by the best pros in the scene, and even boot camps. Try it now for just $8 a month. Now back to Sentinels. The number one key to being the ultimate Sentinel player is knowing how to be dynamic, adaptive, and how to play effectively off your utility. Many players make the mistake of picking a Sentinel with the one setup they learned off of YouTube and just hoping for the best. While your utility setup might net you a few kills in one round, and it might feel really OP, in reality you might struggle for the rest of the game. This is where being dynamic is really important. You should have 3 to 4 solid setups for not only one bomb site, but for each area of the map you plan on playing. This way, you have a plan going into every round while the enemy is none the wiser to what you could be cooking up on a bomb site. The moment you are able to be read by the enemy team is the moment you will start losing impact in your role. This leads us into the second key to playing the Sentinel role, being adaptive. Changing up your setup definitely falls under adapting, but adapting your positioning based off your enemy's tendencies is what really separates good Sentinels from great ones. If you're having a game where it feels like the enemy team is never coming to your site, you're not doing a good enough job of predicting their tendencies. Now, don't get me wrong, there are cases where you could swap between a few different locations and always be avoided. However, trying to read the enemy team to the best of your ability will, in the long run, net you more high-impact rounds. You want to look for patterns in the other team's gameplay that determine what play they might attempt. An example could be the enemy team always commits to a certain bomb site when the enemy has an ultimate online. So let's say every time the enemy Killjoy has her ultimate, the attackers always hit B on ascent. Knowing this information, you can set up rounds where she doesn't have it on A and make the swap for when the scenario occurs. Then you can even take this a step further and adapt your setup to delay the enemy team from walking out when the ultimate goes off. The more in-depth you can take this concept of countering the enemy, the more resilient you're going to be as a player. But before we cover how the role functions on attack, I should quickly ask, who's your favorite Sentinel? Mine's Killjoy because I enjoy her turret and her lockdown the most. But what's yours? Let us know in the comment section down below. Now, on to offensive play. Attack Sentinel is one of the most confusing parts of not only the role, but maybe even the entire game. This is because Sentinels are always looking to play around their setups, and this is impossible when you're actively pushing to try to take a bomb site, at least until you establish control of them. Your objective on offense changes as a Sentinel, but the core aspects of your role remain the same. You want to protect areas of the map that are important to your team while also keeping their options open. A Sentinel's #1 job on attack is to secure the flank for their team, not only so your team isn't surprised by an enemy on their flank, but also in case your team needs to change their plan of attack. On attack, every other role has an extremely specific job they need to accomplish in order for the site takes to go smoothly. Sentinels are the only class that doesn't need to contribute their utility in order for a site to be executed correctly. This is what makes their skill ceiling so incredibly high when playing ranked. Average Sentinel players cover the flank, while advanced Sentinel players know how to maintain control of the map for their team, while pro Sentinel players master those two goals and execute insane lurks for their teams with that space. With the high skill ceiling comes a lot of mistakes, and mistakes playing Sentinels can be some of the most costly for your team, since their safety net falls out from under them whenever you go down in a round. Let's take a look at some of the most common mistakes Sentinel players tend to make. The #1 thing Sentinels at all elos do wrong is not playing off their utility correctly. Every agent in Valorant is given utility to help them succeed and gain advantage over the enemy team. If you're playing an agent like Cypher or Killjoy and a majority of your fights are with people unaffected by your utility, you're doing something wrong. A fantastic example we see all the time are Killjoy players who set up their mollies in a narrow location of the map where enemies need to pass through. This is an amazing idea, since it's extremely hard for the other team to progress through the damage. But many fail to position themselves in areas where they can capitalize off the damaged enemies. This problem usually stems from players being afraid to die since they want their utility to give value first. While it's true preserving your life is important, what's more important is getting impact off your utility. If the enemy team is pushing your site and you're able to take down 2 to 3 enemies before dying, your value is insane. You should use your utility to force your opponents into fights you like to take, not necessarily to kill them with abilities themselves. While it's true being patient is usually a good idea, your job is to defend the site, not to be an alarm. The second most common mistake that plagues Sentinel mains is not identifying their counters and adapting to them. The biggest example of this is with agents that disrupt or destroy your utility. Remember, your utility is the basis of your whole playstyle, so when you play off of it, you lose a ton of value. The biggest culprits of this are agents like Raze, KO, Sova, or Fade. If you are commonly getting agents like this in your game, you need to change your setup so you aren't completely removed from the round. Let's take a look back at Ascent B side as an example. If you know the KO throws his knife close to B main every round, either position away from the knife or ask your teammates to break it for you, since getting hit by the knife disables your usefulness for a short period of time, weakening the bomb site. This way you don't need to change your whole setup for that round. Maybe Sova or Raze has a lineup that breaks your utility holding down an important area of the map. Make sure you play around this by moving your utility so your team isn't punished for it. You see pro players do this all the time on a map like Icebox in the kitchen with Chambers Trip. Your abilities were designed to help you achieve your maximum potential, so don't ever let it go to waste if possible. Finding out how to correct and avoid these mistakes is the first step needed to start taking over your games. But solo queue sometimes doesn't always go your way, especially on roles that require your team to create space for you. So here are some must-know tips for climbing the Valorant ladder. One of the most important things to recognize is the importance of consistency and improvement. When you don't really have a per map main, it's a lot harder to build upon previous mistakes, which is why we recommend developing comfort picks. If you have a favorite Sentinel to play for each map, and don't have anyone insta-locking them before you get the chance to hover, you'll be able to quickly rack up your games on that agent, so that you can fix gaps in your gameplay and consecutively build upon earlier games. In reality, you can play almost any Sentinel on almost any map, but if you want to have the best chances of winning, we'd recommend playing Killjoy on maps like Split, Ascent, Haven, and Fracture, especially after her ultimate buff. Sage on maps like Icebox and Pearl, and Cypher on maps like Bind, Breeze, and also Pearl. Another thing you should implement is to look into the best and most up-to-date setups for each of their agents. If this is something you would like to see a video on, leave a comment down below. But in general, watching high elo players set up on their agents can be a good way to learn since they understand what makes setups so strong in the first place. The more ways you are able to change and be dynamic, the more likely it is you will remain having a high impact from round to round. In solo queue, you can take advantage of the miscommunications that happen with insane utility diversity. Lastly, look to direct your team to play away from wherever your setup is. Most Sentinel utility is extremely potent for getting frags, meaning you don't need 3 players on a bomb site where you have a Cypher with his trips. You want to absorb some pressure for your team so they can have an easier time playing agents that don't have anything to help them defend a bomb site. An example of this could be seen on Ascent. You wouldn't want your Omen or Jet holding a bomb site alone since they don't have any passive utility they can play off of. So you as a Sentinel take advantage of your utility while you can play off of each other. To wrap this video up, let's do a quick recap. Sentinels are always looking to lock down areas of the map that your team needs. This might be a bomb site, your flank, or even mid if the enemies are using that to stage their attacks. A Sentinel player is nothing without their utility, so always focus on positioning relative to your abilities. Remember, we are looking to shoot people in our mollies, not necessarily let them do all the work. Being dynamic and adapting to the enemy is where the skill ceiling of the Sentinel class is expressed the most. Keeping the enemy guessing is key. Never let them read you or counter your defense. On attack, cover your team's flanks and keep your team's options open so you never get stuck in bad positions. These aspects of the role are built through a good understanding of not only your enemy's behavior, but your own comfort on your agent. So look to play Sentinels on their best maps consistently. Every game you play is one step closer to mastering your role. That's all we got for now. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more of it, then don't forget to subscribe, and thank you so much for watching. This has been your host, Sergeant Frost, and we will see you all again in the next one.